Hello, it's Colette from the Sacred Rose Temple. I wanted to do this recording to speak to you about the current times that we're in and having an opinion in those times. So, including myself, I found myself being able to voice certain opinions and being completely challenged on my own Facebook, or attacked or undermined, or just some very negative comments, and I'm sure that we're all going through the same at the moment. So I wanted to just discuss this because on a spiritual path, I find it's very, very important that we don't get stuck in the idea that we're right and someone's wrong. For me, having the free will to express your opinion and your beliefs is very, very important. And we use our Facebook pages to do that. We use our Facebook pages to express who we are. We show what we like, we show what we eat, we show who's in our family, what we do at the weekends, what our properties are like, and it's a kind of exposure of who we are. And it's, for me, much like a window to my bedroom. This is what I like, these are the opinions that I hold. And so long as I'm not hurting or harming anyone in any way, so I am not, being abusive, or I'm holding really awful views about someone, then we have the right to hold the opinion on our Facebook pages. And when we declare something publicly, we also are going to have people who voice the contrary. And this is okay. This is okay that we have an opinion and somebody else holds a different opinion to what we have. And what our Facebook should really do is open these spaces for really beautiful debate. So if there's something that I don't agree with, I will voice I don't agree with that, and I may share my opinion, but I'm not going to, and that's not true for all the time, because I have, say that you're wrong and I'm right. We can say that we don't agree with that. That's not our opinion. Oh, can you not believe how blind you're being? We can get into heated debate, but we must remember that when we step onto somebody else's Facebook platform, that we are in what I call their bedroom, and we have to take what they're saying. We don't have to respect it, we don't have to agree with it, but we have to see that this is some place where they voice their opinion and their beliefs. For me, working with women and trying to empower women, one of the biggest things that women find difficult is to actually come onto their Facebook page and voice maybe an opinion that may be not of common belief. It takes a lot of strength for some women to come on and feel that they can voice that. For example, one woman I've been working with recently has been, for the first time, in a space where she is voicing her beliefs in the current climate that we're in, and has found a whole barrage of attack from family, from friends, people inboxing her and saying, there's something not right. And the thing that's not right is that they are seeing this person grow into an opinion and into a voice and strength, and they begin to, in some way, attack that. And we're not always conscious that we do that. And I've done that with people in the past. I've said, no, that's not right. And I realise that I've condemned them and not opened up debate in the right kind of way. So I think this is really beginning to show us that there is space where we may have differing opinions, but in those differing opinions, can we express our differences without attacking, without being violent, without saying that somebody's not mentally sane because they hold a different belief? Maybe saying that, oh, you're too vocal, or you're sensitive, or things like that can be really passive aggressive and quite domineering. So we have to be careful, don't we, when we structure our language, especially in the written form, that we're trying to come across not in a condescending way, not in a way that asserts that we're right, even though we might really strongly believe that we are, but in a way that in our page we voice what we feel. And if you are going to be controversial to that on somebody's page, that you do that with a bit of respect and with a bit of courtesy to kind of show your opinion on why you don't believe that's true. I'm seeing all kinds of discussions, from little bun fights with people to downright violent, vicious attacks on people, and it's really quite sad, really, that we're in this kind of advanced, energetic evolution in our world where we cannot respect the voice of somebody who's speaking, and especially people who are voicing from here and don't particularly have an agenda to like control a population or abuse somebody, but are generally concerned about the welfare of people. So I'm seeing, in my own opinion, of feeling the deeper agenda out there and being completely anti this vaccine, that I understand why people are pro-vaccine. I understand that people are scared about the pandemic, that they feel that the pandemic will, that the vaccine will ultimately stop the pandemic. I understand that. And my beliefs and my research and my knowledge from over many years is counter that. And so what I will try to do in that discussion is offer the reason why, not telling the people, not giving the answer, but opening room for that person to do that line of research themselves, to find out what I'm talking about. Does that interest you? Are you open to the fact that this might not be the case that you think it is? So yeah, it's been very interesting for me, and as a therapist, just seeing the human behaviour and the human interaction, I'm very aware that when I come on in a trigger, because somebody may trigger me, and we all know if we're doing any kind of work that the trigger is when someone says something you don't like, or raises heat in your body, or makes you quite angry, that when I get a trigger, I really sit with that trigger in myself, and I try to connect to the person that's writing before I attack them, or before I use my anger that I'm feeling to vent on them. So I go through a process before I begin to reply, and always trying to sit in the sovereign self, the heartfelt self, the compassionate self, and the self that doesn't want to control or vent on that person. So that's how I've been navigating the energy of late. There's something I really wanted to say for people that are doing spiritual work, and there's many people who aren't doing spiritual work that do share and look at my videos, and I just wanted to speak about spiritual awakening. So spiritual awakening happens to us at some point in our lifetime, in some lifetimes and not in some lifetimes. I believe that we all are awakened spiritually at some point. And for me, I had a spiritual awakening, and I am in layers of spiritual awakening from many different points in my life. And it's very hard to describe to people what a spiritual awakening feels like and how it acts in your life. So I'm going to try to discuss that in some context or some way in this video. So for me, a spiritual awakening happened when I started with yoga, and all I can describe is that I started to do yoga, and when I was in the asana, I was beginning to get deep feelings. That's all I can describe it as. There was a feeling that was happening in my body. It would bring me into emotion, tears sometimes. I'd sometimes feel anger. I would feel this space inside myself. that I had never ventured into before. And this space did not include my external world. It had nothing to do with my job, my hobbies, nothing. It was this space inside me that was completely open and feeling, and it was searching for something. So that happened on the yoga mat, and every time I came into yoga asana, and I did yoga for many, many years, and 3-4 times a week, often going to like workshops at the weekend or in my holidays, I'd always choose to do yoga training or yoga work because of this feeling that I got that was so hard to explain to anyone. I can say that that feeling was close probably to taking a drug that might make you high, or just being super, super happy, content, peaceful. And so every time I came to a space on the yoga mat or maybe in meditation, I kept connecting to this place, and it was beautiful. So I started to do reading, I started to go to yoga workshops that were not of the physical, that were connected to sages and Brahmin and mystical teachers that spoke about God and source and the universe and spirit. And something started to awaken in me. I had been brought up in a family that was of mixed religion. We were all christened different religions to invoke a peaceful family unit. My grandfather was from Ireland, and so decided that his children would be not in conflict, and we were all christened different. So I grew up as a Presbyterian, and loved to go Sunday school and loved the kind of spiritual connection that I got as a younger child, not the religious connection. And as I grew up, I started to move away from that, and at one point I even called myself an atheist. But as yoga began to work inside me, and as meditation came into my life, I began to realise that there was something much bigger on this planet, in this universe, that was guiding me, that was calling me, that was asking me to step forward. And I decided to listen to that call. I ended up traveling to Peru, and I worked with plant medicine, which was really not something that, if you knew me, that you would think I would do. Not somebody who is into drugs or psychedelics, and that wasn't part of my upbringing or childhood or teen years, in fact. And so the biggest thing that scared me, that I began to find out as I grew up, was the feeling of losing control. And I knew that that space that I was discovering inside me was about completely losing control, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't want to take drugs and psychedelics, but I did want to find this space. So cutting a long story short, I ended up in Peru, and I worked with plant medicine, which was completely and utterly the most horrific experience I've ever been through. And the biggest, deepening, most mind-blowing experience that I've ever been through. And I thought on some level that I was aware of spirit and dimensions and all that cannot be seen with the eyes, and I was completely wrong, because that journey opened so much for me. I can honestly say that I walked from that journey into the body of someone very, very different. I knew that my whole purpose in life was to become more connected to that source that I had been given the utter privilege of meeting in those journeys with the shamans. I knew that I was connected to nature. I knew that I had a divine purpose that was beyond my current job and my current situation, and that I had to be really brave and give up everything that I knew and walk a different path. And that's exactly what I did. I blew up my world and became absolutely engulfed with the flames of investigation and inquiry and a thirst for something I still didn't know. So when I had this awakening, it made me thirsty to do more work, spiritual work, and I became then very focused on doing more and more healing work on myself. And every healing journey I've done, every deep study of the self and working through wounds and pains and psychology of myself and the inner workings of my mind and my behaviours has opened me up to different levels of awakening, different levels of feeling God, feeling source, feeling universe, feeling myself not as this body, but also as this body, feeling that life is so open and so beyond what the eyes can see, that I have walked that path now for many years, and it's become my life. I have integrated my everyday life into the spiritual path that I could only dream of. And you all know my story if you've watched my videos, and how I've ended up here in France and opening a spiritual retreat. I teach people spiritual work online. I lead by the healing that I've gone through and the work that I've gone through and the knowing and the openings that has happened. So this is what I want to describe as awakening. And when you awaken on the many levels that there are, that you see the world in a very, very different way. Now, we all see people writing on the internet about certain things that are to do with awakening and seeing the bigger picture. And I see a lot of it. And when we have realizations, we get caught in realizations. And I see that with a lot of people who keep going into the story of these realizations, this agenda, this is happening in the world. And the realizations only ever should take us into a different emotional state and then lead us into an action. They change our reality. So for me, every time that I've had a realization or awakening, I've asked and inquired, what do I do with this? What is this showing me? How do I feel about that? And then what is that going to change in my life? And if we're going through that cycle, then the 3D, your reality, your life begins to change. Your old relationships fall away, your friendships fall away, your jobs fall away, the homes that you live in fall away, because you cannot stay with the past, because you are evolving, you are changing. And I see people giving lots of advice out there, lots of, realizations, but the 3D world hasn't changed. They're still stuck in the same cycles, the same world that they lived in. Evolution means change. So for me, I never ever will take the advice or the guidance from someone whose life does not represent those realizations and the changes that they made and embodied. If someone is still living the same nightmare, they are not doing the work. They are just having lots of realizations. And I think that's what triggers people out there, because they're seeing these people say these quite wacky things, but those people's reality have not changed. They're just saying crazy stuff. It's not infused their life or changed their life. And so that becomes very unbelievable. So today I had a discussion with a really lovely guy that I know from my yoga studio, and I was talking to him about this awakening and what happens to us when we awaken and when we start to see things differently. Now, the Hindu system or the yoga system will call this Maya, and the Maya means the veils. So to make that more modern, let's talk about it in the terms of the Matrix. So the film The Matrix, Neo takes the red pill, and the red pill drops the veils, the Maya, and he sees the world as it really is. And that's very true for people who have experienced awakening. we see the veils drop and we begin to see the truth of what's going on out there, the bigger picture, the picture your eyes can't see. So some guy said to me, I'm not taking advice of someone who's basing their whole assumptions on feeling, but feeling is very important in this world. The mind, and where we kind of go through realization and where we go through opinion, is connected to the ego. And when we come into feeling, we're connecting with the soul space, the self, the deeper part of ourselves. And for me, the self and the soul space is always been the place for me that has brought about the deepest changes in my life. My head and ego speaks to me regularly, like everybody's, and part of the work I've always done is to quieten the mind in here and listen to the feeling self here that will intuitively tell me what's good or what's bad for me. Generally, up here tells you what you're scared of. This scares you, don't do that. This scares you, believe this. So those of us that have had an awakening of some level, at some sort, are starting to connect and have connected to our deeper feeling states and the intuition and the deeper knowing. And when the veils drop, it becomes, I was shocked. I couldn't believe what the fabric of this world was made of. I couldn't believe what the bigger agenda wanted for us, not the agenda that's connected to God and source, oh no, but the agenda that's connected to the other polarity, the dark, whether you believe that's Satan, darkness, whatever. I just know there are two opposing polarities. That's the way energy works. When there's a one at one end, there's another at the other. And so we have light and dark, we have day and night, we have moon and sun. This is how our world works, it's in duality. So if we've got God and universe and spirit and creator, we've got that that's dark and bad and evil and all of those things. And I don't connect that to religion at all. But what I do see in my awakening, and many people that are my friends out there who have had similar awakenings, that we are realizing, and I've realized for a long time, there are two forces at play in our world. And the bigger force that is at hand does not really care about us or want our greater good. It wants a subservient workforce that is working in a way that keeps the world ticking over, that makes us pay our taxes, that pays us money out, takes our money back. It's not an empowering system. And for me, I realised that on one of my awakenings and decided that I was giving up that world. That world was not working for me, and I was absolutely determined not to be part of that slave system. And so I did the teaching, I did the inner work, I did the movement from the realisation to create a different reality. So I came out, I was a school teacher, I then became a yoga studio owner and a business owner, and I gave that up too in search for myself, that took me to be nomadic and travel the world with my son. And I was searching for the dream that I had. I wanted to open a yoga studio, wanted to practice and preach and teach and live everything over those 20 odd years that I had learned and that I had seen, and all beyond the veils that had dropped. I wanted to try and teach people. So the reason I'm talking about awakening is that I am aware that unless you have had a deep spiritual awakening, I mean something that's happened to you, and I know people that have had death experiences, I know that people have had marriage breakups, deep gut-wrenching loss, tragedy, their children dying, their partner dying, that something that is a catalyst for a deeper awakening in your life, where you begin to search for something beyond your known reality. That is an awakening. And what I'm seeing out there is a massive divide happening between those that are awakened and those that are yet to experience this dropping of veils, this dropping of reality as they know it. And this is not a race, it's not a competition, it's not a place to look down on somebody, but it's a place to be compassionate. It's a place to look and say, well, I've had an altered reality. I've seen things that are different to what you see. And it's about us not being in our ego saying we're going to change that person, or the person who hasn't had the awakening looking up and saying that person's crazy. It's about us both mutually being able to see the standpoint that each of us is in. So for me, people might say to me, I have no idea what world you live in, no idea. And it sounds pretty radical, it sounds pretty crazy, but yeah, that's not where I am. And that's great. And I know that they might be not in the awakened state. I don't judge them, because we all have this cycle that we will go through. It will happen to us all. And the points that we are ready for that, or have to go through it, is not our decision. It really isn't our decision. It's not in our hands. So it's about trying to be compassionate for everybody and saying, okay, let's stop using you're asleep. The people who are sleeping, they're not sleeping. They have merely not had the experience, maybe in this lifetime, that makes them see beyond veils. And let's not call people who have had this awakening crazy or conspiracy theorists. It's about coming to this middle ground with each other, saying, let's listen to each other, let's understand each other. I'm not going to agree with you because I see things differently, but I'm not going to judge you or condemn you or try to silence you. And I'm seeing that a lot. It's a really bad thing to try to silence someone unless what they're doing is damaging to other people. But even then, we might consider some behaviour damaging than you know, being really cruel to people, or maybe saying, I don't believe in vaccinations and you believe that's damaging. But why is that person saying that? Do they really want to kill the population if they're anti-vaccine? Of course they don't. Do they really want to kill children if they have the vaccine? Of course they don't. So let's try to look into the intention of the people that are speaking, and try to understand that they're not being evil, that they're not being, you know, mean, but they're just expressing an opinion that's opposite to ours. So with those veils that I spoke about that change in an awakening, there is often always a place where we begin. These are the levels of awakening that we begin to experience and realise ourselves. And so we hear this term a lot, self-realisation. And self-realisation is when we begin to understand how we work, how the self works, how the inside of me works. So why I behave in certain ways, why I have so much happiness or loneliness or sadness or grief, why I have certain likes or dislikes, what how my childhood has affected me as an adult, how being a woman influences me, how being a white woman influences me, how being from a different socioeconomic background influences me. So it's about looking at all the different parts of myself. Makes me begin to become self-realised. I realise why I behave in certain ways, and I realise why I get angry about certain things, and I realise why I want to change people, and I realise why I want to be right. It doesn't make me perfect, it just makes me understand that behaviour, and I'm work in progress, so I'm trying to change that behaviour. And that's the difference between people who are doing the inner work and people who aren't doing the inner work, is that if we don't self-reflect, if we don't self-realise, and remembering that we can't always detect behaviours in the self, and we often need guidance or support or help, which is why I seek teachers and look at psychology and therapists. I begin to be able to help myself and work into ways that are detrimental and hold me back. So, for example, from a working class background, council estate girl who was really wanting to be educated, I had a thirst for learning and a thirst for spirituality. I knew that I had some issues with lack of abundance and views on having to work, get a mortgage. I never ever believed that I could be self-sufficient, mortgage-free, and living in abundance. And so I had to teach myself the ways in which I got caught up in the mortgage system and in a marriage and all those things that society in my environment had deemed the right way to go. So I deconditioned myself from those and wanted to realise how I could be self-empowered, self-sufficient, my own boss, and working from my soul's passion. And so that's what that means for me, to be, you know, using my self-realisation to create myself. And then we go into a deeper space when we start to realise ourselves, because we start to go beyond the physical and the conditionings, and we begin to find that space that I found on that yoga mat, where there's something much bigger than me, something much more mysterious and unknown and divine in nature and holy. And maybe that was God, maybe that's what the Bible talked about when I was at Sunday school, maybe that's what Hindu philosophy talks about, maybe that's what Rumi talks about in his poetry. And I became really thirsty for this path that allowed me to search for the divine, for God. And I found God not through religion and not through anyone dictating what God was, but through my own self-realization. I found, wow, there is a God, there is this bigger force of energy at play. And through that, then I realized there was the opposing force of energy, the darker energy that was not in my best interest. And so, all of this, the awakening, the self-realization, the God realization, allows me to have such a wider vision of what's going on in the world, beyond the third dimension, beyond the 3D our lives, into the other dimensions, because God doesn't exist in this dimension only through us, but, you know, in other dimensions, and the universe is so complex, we don't know it, the mind doesn't know it. So when anything comes in that challenges what we can see with our eyes, then it becomes a huge point of controversy and can only be understood by those who have had the deeper awakenings that has allowed them to move the veils, the layers in the 3D. So this is why we're coming into this place where we are beginning to challenge each other, and I'm seeing it all over Facebook. For me, it's very heartwarming to see so many people, you know, who are awakening and seeing the bigger picture, because this path for me has been very lonely. It's been a path where it's been very hard to meet people that operate the way I do and think the way I do and feel the way I do. And I have met lots of people, beautiful people on this path. I was lucky to meet a partner a few years ago who also believes and sees and have the same awakening experience. So I can get met in that way, and the women who come in my courses, and the men who come for guidance, and the people who come to me for spiritual advice, or maybe to ask me things that I can see with clairvoyance, that I have this beautiful soul tribe, this beautiful family of people who think the way I do. And that often doesn't include people you love, does it? Like your parents or your brothers or your sister, they may not be on the same path, and that's fine. It is not a point to conflict with, it's not a point to judge each other. So I really want us to all begin to have empathy. So those people who may feel that they've not had an awakening into what I'm talking about and don't want one, that we are experiencing a different reality than you, and that we should not become called crazy or conspiracy theorists or hippies or whatever vocabulary is out there. And neither should people who have had awakening on some level be referring to people as sheep. It's a word that gets used when we're angry, when we are not feeling that we're being heard. So it's about a mutual respect for where we are, all are. And if you're challenged with your beliefs, if you feel that someone's challenging you, just hold your ground and remember that you don't have to buy into that energy if you don't want to. You don't have to be answerable, especially on your own, say, Facebook page or media outlet. You don't have to respond. And if someone's being disrespectful to you, then you can delete them. Just delete, block. It's not worth the energy that is being sapped from you. We cannot change each other, and that's not what we're going for. We plant information that we feel is right ourselves, and we plant those seeds and hope they germinate. We do not push to change people from either side of the coin. So I think it's really important we all, while this is happening in our world, whether we believe that it is just the pandemic and we're all being locked up for that purpose, I certainly don't. I feel and know deep inside that there's something bigger going on. I can't profess to know everything because I see certain things with my clairvoyant eye, my psychic eye, but I'm also aware that the mystery doesn't allow me to see everything because there are many levels of awakening and I've experienced them all. But I do know for many years that many guides and teachers were telling me that this time was going to come and there would be a huge change in human nature. We will begin to see that there were forces that were working against us and a darker force that was not in for our best interest. And I didn't believe that years ago either. I just didn't. I sat there with an open mouth in front of a teacher who shared that, thinking, is this person crazy? And I've obviously, as I got deeper into removing the veils into self-realization, to God realization, that I realized that this was true. And we are currently in a space that has been documented by many prophets, sages, holy texts. Some call it the Kali Yuga, the time of descent, where the world needs to change. And it goes without saying that the world will always go through change and will always go through a descent, a death, so that it can be reborn. So I know that we're not in an apocalypse, as in the world, like a zombie apocalypse, end of the world, people killing each other. But I know we're in apocalypse, which is a transformation, a death and a rebirth. I don't exactly know how this is going to play out at the moment, but I do know that there is this push to enslave and to own us as a human race, and that there's also a bigger push to free us from this. And I think that's where we all need to take care of one another, to support each other, knowing that we're all in this together, regardless of your belief. And what we should be caring about is each other's welfare, and that we are well through this, and that we, whatever our belief, walk through this with support and the ability to voice how we feel. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight, but I just really felt it was important to share this with you all so that we could all have a better understanding. I often think that people really don't know what it's like to be spiritual, and some of the things that we've walked through and gone through on a spiritual path. And I really hope that this video manages to share a little bit or illuminate what that might be like for my fellow friends who have walked a deep spiritual path and are aware that the dots are connecting and we're seeing what we always thought might happen, and we are trying to pull together in this, and with everyone else, this isn't a time to separate. So let's hold each other through this, through our difference of opinions, and try to be what this world needs more than anything, and that's loving, compassionate, empathetic. Bye for now, sending you all much love at this time.